Everyone, thanks again for participating in the second annual USC Aikens National Distance Learning Week Conference. A couple of housekeeping before I introduce George. If you need to leave any questions or comments, you may do so in the chat area. If you would like a copy of his presentation, look to your lower right side of your screen, click on his handout, click download files, and then follow any on-screen instructions to get his handout to your computer. Towards the end of the session, I will push his survey out to your browser. It should open up in a new window. And if you will take about 15 or 30 seconds to fill that out, I'm sure he would appreciate that. I will be helping to monitor any questions that comes in and move them over to his question box so that he can address those at his leisure. So right now I'll bring to you George, and I'm going to butcher your last name. Should have asked you that earlier. But he's the founder of Oasis 4HE, the Salsa project, and I've heard a version of this presentation when he did it a few months ago at another virtual conference, and I think it was in its infancy at that time, so I'm honored to be here to see how things have unfolded. But he's going to talk about the syllabus. Your accessibility journey starts here. You can take it away, George.
Okay. Well, thank you, Veronica. So just to get started, for Marion and Winona, if I'm saying that right, if you wouldn't mind just throwing in the chat window what your role is at the university, if you work at a university, or because I'm just curious, are you instructors or course designers, support people, administrators? It might be all of the above, but okay. 1 year instructional designer, trainer, okay. All right. It's typing. Okay. College, or 2-year college. Great. Okay. Well, this is how I've got the presentation laid out. Introduction, about 5 minutes. And then you'll receive some information about WCAG 2.0, and I will explain what that acronym means. That'll be about 5 minutes. And then we'll have an overview of just a few accessibility best practices. I'm keeping the focus pretty narrow, so that we can get through and maybe go a little bit deeper on some things. And then we're going to review an open source syllabus creator. That'll take about 10 minutes. And then we'll have questions and answers. If there's not a lot of questions and answers, then we can circle back and look at some of the other subjects that we've already covered. So about me, I've been an instructional designer for more than 7 years. I've primarily focused on higher education in the public sector, but I also have done some consulting work for private and for-profit higher education institutions. I've consulted on more than 500 courses. So in some cases that's been, a complete redesign. Other cases it's been, specific help on a section or maybe reviewing it, using our rubric, our quality rubric that we've developed at Utah State University, I should say that. And I've developed about 25, a little more than 25 new fully online courses. So these are, 16-week courses, nothing there, and then a full course. So that's a little bit about me. So yeah, from the title, talked about getting started on your accessibility journey. And I've heard a lot of folks in the accessibility circles talking about accessibility as a journey, and I think it's a really good metaphor because in reality, just like most things in education, accessibility is not an endpoint. It's not a place that you get to and then you're done, and then you just you've arrived and you have a big party, and then accessibility is handled. It's really it's an ongoing thing. You know, like in all things that I do as a designer, I focus on incremental progress, and making sure that we're either I'm moving forward personally or the people that I work with are. And sometimes it's a leap forward. Other times it's a little bit less. But in my mind, to keep moving forward is really the focus. And so I think that the syllabus is a great place to start with accessibility. Some of the administrators I've talked to, deans of colleges or department heads, a lot of times they say, well, I don't, the syllabus is fine. I need to jump into captioning, or I need to jump into, making sure all of our images are tagged with all headings. And, um, those initiatives are great. They're huge, they're massive efforts. And one of the reasons why I think the syllabus is a great place to start is it's something that you can get your hands around. I think that schools that have a vision and a goal of having every one of their syllabi in an accessible format can achieve that. And so this is a little, Twitter, or a little tweet here that I think, is true. In high school, the syllabus, it's not necessarily a joke, but I mean, if you ignore it, you could probably get along. In college, and I think even as we move into more teaching formats that have a e-learning component, whether it's a flipped class or a hybrid class or a fully online class, um, those separations in time and space, I think, um, really benefit from a strong syllabus that's very easy to understand and well laid out. Um, and so that's why that's why I choose to focus on the syllabus. And so that's what we're going to talk about accessibility, through that context today. So WCAG 2.0 is the current web content accessibility guidelines standard that people are following. This is what a lot of states are writing their own legislation to. I'm not sure what percentage, but some institutions have their own, accessibility standards that reference this, and it's really it's the standard, it's the gold standard, or platinum, or the best metal that you can think of in terms of web accessibility. And this is from their statement about what they're this is part of their statement. They're saying following these guidelines will make content accessible to a wider range of people with disabilities, including blindness and low vision, deafness and hearing loss, learning disabilities, cognitive limitations, limited movement, speech disabilities, photosensitivity, and combinations of these. So that's a lot, right? And again, I think it goes back to that journey metaphor. There's no arriving at a point where you have all of these things handled. And I think accessibility can be somewhat overwhelming because it does cover all of these things. But again, in my personal opinion, focusing on some goals that are achievable, making those goals, setting new goals, this incremental progress is what's really important. And you'll see that in some of the things that we're going to focus on today. It's certainly not going to cover all of these disabilities or combinations. So there's two different checklists that you can use to see if you're compliant with WCAG. The one on the left is from the WCAG organization itself. Now, it's a very technical specification. This one is the one that has everything in it. And if you're talking about meeting WCAG for legal standards or as a developer or it's going to have everything that you can possibly want to have for WCAG 2.0. The one on the right is from an organization called WebAIM. And I actually just started working for WebAIM really at the beginning of this month. And this is an organization that I've followed for quite some time, really since I've been at USU, more than 7 years. And I don't know if you folks are familiar with WebAIM, but it stands for Accessibility in Mind, and they're a nonprofit organization that promotes these web accessibility standards, and they have a lot of good tools. And I can say great things about them because I just started working there, so there's no I haven't really participated in building any of these things. But they are very this checklist that WebAIM provides is very useful, and it's a little bit more concise, and it gives you some special tips in there in some of the areas. So those are the two checklists that you can take a look at. Well, before I move on from WCAG, any quick questions on what it means? Obviously, we don't have the scope to go too in depth here, but making sense so far.
You have a couple on your question box.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, I'm gonna hold those off until the end, just for continuity's sake. But those are great and important questions. So, in terms of accessibility best practices, I really want to focus on three accessibility practices, and people could argue about which are the most important ones, but these are three, again, that I think everybody can get their head around. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with images, but that's a lot of people know about images now and how they need to have an alt tag, and these are ones you might not know as much about. So I thought I would cover these today. So when we talk about headings, and I'm going to stop the PowerPoint for a second and share my screen. Where is this? Okay. It's bigger so you can see it. So if we were to say, this is a typical syllabus that comes in and has the different sections. If I were to use an accessibility checker, and for today, I'm going to use one that's called Wave, and that's made by WebAIM. What you can see here is these different headings. There's an H1, an H2, an H3. These headings are very important for screen readers because this is how they are able to navigate through a document without having to listen to all the information. So, let's say that this was a PDF that you had created and put up in your learning management system. Even if all of this text was selectable, which, again, most people are, at the point now where they know, hey, I can't just put up an image of my syllabus. It needs to be selectable. But in this case, imagine that I wanted to get to something down here. But without those headings, I would have to listen through all of this information, where, in contrast, by having headings, I could go from the title and then I could skip to the different sections. So contact information, welcome to class, course description, learning outcomes. So these headings are super important. And Most PDFs don't have them. There are things that you can do with Microsoft Word, which seems to be the most popular syllabus document creator, kind of the standard right now to get those in there. But even when you've used those settings, a lot of times it's necessary to go back into Adobe Acrobat and either change some of the headings that might not have been labeled right, or touch up the touch up the tab order as well. And this is the problem that a lot of people find with creating a template in Microsoft Word. We'll go back to that in a little bit. Okay, so jump back in here. Okay, so that's the basic idea with headings. And for those, I'm sure we've all written research papers before. A great way to talk about headings, if you talk about them with your faculty members, is to say, just like when somebody turns in a paper in APA or MLA, or whatever formatting you might use for your papers, that's the same thing really that we're talking about here with these headings, and that's one of the great things about HTML, or hypertext, or hypertext markup language. The language of the web now, and one of the exciting things about resources being on the web is they're going to start making some of these accessibility things much easier to cope with. A second thing is underline. For accessibility and usability, underline should only be used to designate a hyperlink. As I'm sure that you're aware at this point, when you have underline in a document, or especially a web document, people have come to associate that with a hyperlink, a link taking you out to some place. And so, when people use underline in their syllabus for emphasis, I think students often get confused. They'll try to click on it. And underline is also something that really draws the eye towards it. So if you have a lot of different underlines in your document, that might be a little bit busy for people to look at. So there's a tag, the U tag, which is used for underline, and so when you have a text editor, it'll use that U tag to put the emphasis, and that is no longer supported in the latest standard for HTML. And so for both accessibility and usability, it's suggested that you use bold or italic. The third area I want to just cover really quickly is color contrast. So if you look at these three examples here, this might be sometimes if you have a header on a table and you have contrasting text, or you might have a color of your document background. In order for this contrast, in order for this text to be accessible, there needs to be a sufficient contrast between the text color and the background color, and it's not always obvious, what that level is. This is going to affect a number of different people that have vision issues, from color blindness to low vision, and other things like that. So if we were to run a contrast check on these three different examples, we would see that this first one is 1.61 to 1. So it's 1.6 to 1 ratio. And showing this in red, this has failed, because the contrast ratio must be 4.5 to 1 or greater, according to WCAG 2.0, and that's the AA standard. There's a AAA standard that from the folks that I've talked to in the accessibility realm, it's much higher. Most people are just focusing on this AA standard as a lot more achievable. So moving up here, we see that now we've gotten to 3.7, but not quite at that ratio. And then this final one is 4.6 to 1. So that one has now passed. And these values, again, I've got these values from a contrast checker that's available from WebAIM. And if we have a little bit of time afterwards and people are interested in looking at that more, we can get into that. All right. So here's the good news. The good news is that with HTML, with things going digital, accessibility becomes a lot more achievable. And really, in some ways, a lot of accessibility advocates have said, the web is the greatest thing to ever happen to persons with disabilities, and the promise that it holds for them is really kind of mind blowing. And I'm sure you can think of all different examples of that, but somebody with limited mobility, boy, I mean, you could do a lot of traveling, on the web, or other examples that I'm sure you can think of. So what I've put together here in this slide is just some different accessibility resources. So this is linked to WCAG, the WebAIM page, WebAIM's Wave tool, which we've already looked at a little bit. W3C has just put together a bunch of developer tools that came out this week, actually. There's the Accessibility Project. Google has an accessibility extension for the Chrome browser. This one's really cool and really important. So NVDA, I'm blanking on the acronym right now, non-visual display application, maybe. Anyways, it's two gentlemen from Australia have put this together. This is an open source screen reader, and this is amazing for developers, because for a long time a screen reader called JAWS was really widely used by people, and in order for developers to use it, they would get an evaluation copy, and then I'm not really sure on what the history is, but somewhere along the line, JAWS basically said, the people that make JAWS said, we really don't want, the evaluation is for, persons with blindness to evaluate whether or not they're going to use this product. It's not for you to see if your pages are accessible. So NVDA is an open source alternative, and which is also amazing for persons with blindness, because instead of spending close to $1,000 in JAWS, they can use this other one for free. So as you get a little bit deeper into accessibility and you want to have an experience to see what it's like to use the web without a mouse, that's a great resource. And then finally, the Salsa project, which we're going to take a look at right now. Okay, so Salsa was developed at Utah State University. Excuse me. It is open source, and so again, there's lots of different ways to interpret open source, but in this case, it means that all of the code is out there at this site on GitHub, and anybody could take that code and build their own instance of Salsa. As we're going to take a look at the open instance in a web, in the web, the one that the Salsa project hosts, that is also free to use for people that come up there, and they don't have to sign up for an account or provide any information. They can just use it. So since fall 2014, more than 20,000 students have been served through Salsa. And recently, Salsa has been accepted as a Canvas certified partner. So that means that Structure has vetted Salsa as an application, and we have that official status. The reason why we have this tight integration with Canvas is that's what we use in the state of Utah. All of our institutions are on Canvas. Much like it sounds like there's a consortium of colleges in Georgia using Desire to Learn. And we've been using Canvas for, boy, 3.5 years, I would say now. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing for a second the PowerPoint, and I'll share my screen, and we'll take a look at Salsa. Okay, so this is the Salsa homepage here, and gives you some information about it. But the way that you start to use Salsa is just to come in here and click this big green arrow. It says no sign up, click and create. So what we do when somebody clicks on this link is we create a new instance. And I'm going to use this one that already has our example content in it so that we can take a look at it. Actually, maybe I'll start a new one too, because sometimes when I do this, I end up breaking my example. So if I just come in here and click on it, now this is probably a little bit hard for you to see, but there's a code here, and this is a 30-digit unique code that allows the person creating this to come back and edit it. And they're the only person that will have this code unless they give it to somebody. So this is how we provide access to this tool without requiring anyone to sign up or no one has to give their email address. They can always come back and edit their Salsa from that link. And under the My Salsa button, there is that link that people can copy and create a bookmark with. There's also what we call a template link, which generates a new Salsa that is pre-populated with the information from an existing Salsa. So, for example, if I was an instructor and I had, if I was the lead instructor, I could just go in here and send people this template link, and when they clicked on it, it would create a whole new instance of that Salsa with the information that they could go in and edit for themselves. And this code is completely different from the previous code, and they're in no way joined. Okay, so when we're going back and talking about headings before, one of the great things about Salsa is that the accessibility issues, some of them that we've addressed today, they're built in. So this is always going to be a heading 1. This is always going to be a heading 2. This is a heading 2. Anything underneath of a heading 2 is always going to be a heading 3. There's no way to break that styling or change it. Obviously, there's a way to change the information because you're not going to say heading in text. But so by having this accessibility features kind of baked into Salsa, it certainly makes an instructor's job easier. And for institutions that get to the point where there is that concern about having accessible syllabi, it really cuts down on the amount of time that course designers or instructional designers or curriculum specialists or whomever have to spend reviewing syllabi because they're just accessible by their very nature. The other thing that we do is we organize a syllabus into some different views. So the information view is kind of the black and white stuff that students are looking for at the beginning. Outcomes, learning outcomes or learning objectives go in this section here. We have a tool that's based upon Bloom's Revised Taxonomy, where you can click on a different level of Bloom's, and if you wanted to start building an outcome with, let's say, diagram, by clicking on that, it drops that word into this text editor down here, and I can just say diagram 7 parts of blah, blah, blah. So it offers people these action verbs that we often give people on a piece of paper, but this way it encourages them to just be able to drop them right in. If there were institutional outcomes or program outcomes or professional standards, those could be built into an instance of Salsa and then just added in this same way, having these different lists, clicking a button and just dropping those in there. That's one of the things that we've done at USU is with the IDEA evaluation standards. Then you come into resources, and you'll see that, this is what we've tried to do with this part, this basic instance of Salsa is make it very plastic, make it very changeable. So, people can come in here and, if you don't want to call it learning resources, you can call it, stuff for class or whatever you want. But as you're adding these different headings in, so let's say the first thing you need is Canvas, and you give a little description of it. As I add in a heading, again, this is always going to be a heading 3. This is always going to be a heading 3. And that's actually the level that we go to right now is that third level heading. So, this one could be online resources, whatever you want to put in there. And then, if you don't want to have a section, you can remove that. If you don't have, some people put all of their resources just in the information view by adding different sections. So they might come in here and say, I don't need that. So that you can just disable that whole view. Activities, kind of going to be the same thing. And when you look at our this example, one of the things that we're trying to do with a Salsa, which by the way it's an acronym. It stands for Styled and Accessible Learning Services Agreement. So trying to redefine a little bit, what a syllabus is for. So the styled comes in, with those headings and the different layouts we're talking about, accessible. And then learning service agreement, really a lot of people consider the syllabus, kind of a contract between the teacher and the students and in between the institution and the student as well. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is keep these learning activities pretty high level. And then when you want to talk about the different, textbooks that you're going to use or, blow-by-blow readings or video presentations, put those in your learning management system. So put those in Desire to Learn or Blackboard or Canvas. And I think that there's a lot to be said for keeping the syllabus somewhat high level. Policies. So in this case, there's a course policy section and a university policy section. So at USU, all of these policies are hard-coded in. They're not in this case because it's an example, but so normally this would be a read-only field that I couldn't edit. And whether a field is read-only or editable, or you could have something like maybe the honor pledge, this was required, but you would allow them to add things to that. Those are all decisions that can be made amongst administrators, and then the tool's really here to just kind of enforce those decisions. Then we have a grades calculator, which a lot of people like because sometimes, even though it's easier to base things on 1,000, people have their various reasons for not doing it. So we calculate all of the points for you, and this open instance even has the ability to change these. So I could come down here and make that a 92, and then everything kind of cascades down and changes. And then we have a schedule. So again, we're encouraging people to keep this pretty high level. If you're not using weeks, if you're using modules, you could change these different headings here. But again, as far as accessibility goes, we have the proper markup on these headings, and you could see that when we run it on the Wave tool. There were no errors. So let me open this back up. Stop sharing that. Let's get to some of the questions that we have here. Okay. What tools do you use to design your e-courses? So we use Canvas as our learning management system, and so the courses are primarily built in that. One of the things I've been focusing on lately as a designer is to try to build a framework of the course in HTML and then bring that HTML into Canvas. And really, that's the same thing that we're talking about with Salsa too, because it's built outside of the learning management system and then brought in. At some point, hearing Veronica's story before of 3 LMSs in 6 years, everybody's going to be migrating sooner or later, whether it's to Super Desire to Learn or Super Canvas or Black Bollard Ultra now that they have, and when those changes occur, I think there's a lot of benefit and a lot of comfort in having access to your materials outside of those learning management systems in a generic format. Some of the other tools that I use are Adobe Illustrator. I like to make graphics. I like GIMP as an open source, kind of a Photoshop-ish tool. I use Camtasia for screen capture and making instructional videos. I would say those are the main things I use as a designer. Okay, if a faculty or institution wanted to adopt or use Salsa, what's the process, or is this private to your institution? Okay, it's absolutely not private. It's open to everybody. Generally, there's a couple of different routes. One route is that the person, the institution could go to GitHub and download the code and really run their own instance. We host our instance on our Salsa instance on Amazon, and we have what's called an Amazon machine instance, which is kind of a recipe for building Salsa on a server, and we're more than happy to share that with people. And that's one of the things that differentiates us from some of the other open source tools. We genuinely want people to use this tool and adopt it. I'll say right now, state of the, where we're at, I'm really interested in working with different institutions. I generally donate about 10 hours of my time to building a custom instance for them. If people are in our pilot program, we can host it for a certain amount of time. So, that varies from case to case, but the Salsa project does have some resources for getting people started. All right, the third question, is this for an online syllabus? So when you come out, when you're in Salsa and you hit publish, it's going to generate this link. Okay, and this link is actually going to stay persistent no matter what. So if you come and make changes to this, it'll be changed automatically as soon as you publish it, because in reality, what's happening every time I click on this URL, this is being rebuilt, right? So one of the nice things is you can give this link to your students, and whenever you at the beginning of the year, set it out through an email or put it in your learning management system. Whenever you make those updates, they're instantly updated to your course. Yeah. Oops. Sorry about that. Yeah. So so we publish, this is the open instance. We publish somebody's syllabus online, and it's served up on Amazon, and so that always persists. As far as our integration um, with the learning management system, let's see. Let me show you an example. Butler Community College is one of our clients, and I have their permission to show some things to people. They've been great to work with, and they use Salsa campus wide now. So in this case, what we've done is Canvas gives you the ability to add in a custom JavaScript or a custom CSS. And so we have a button that lives right in Salsa. And when you click on it, it's going to come out and say, hey, are you authorized to do this? And if I say yes, then it opens up my syllabus in Salsa. So if I come in here and I say November, whatever we were at today, 11th, 2015, and I save that change and then publish it out to Canvas, it's going to go and publish it directly to this HTML editor, which I will see once I refresh. So we publish directly into here. Now, we also put a link here for people that want to print, but I would consider this, and I think Butler does as well, the syllabus of record, and I'll tell you why. Anytime you're using an HTML editor, there's going to be some challenges with accessibility because you're trying to make things easy on people, and you're preventing certain things from being used. So this is actually the syllabus of record. So, in terms of getting started for somebody who's on Blackboard or Desire to Learn or a different system, my recommendation would be just to take this link right here and plug that in, wherever you want to in terms of a different page. Now, you could also copy the HTML and plug it into one of their editors and see how it does. It should look pretty good from some testing that we've done. Okay, and I guess I kind of answered number 4 in an LMS environment. So, again, we have a pretty good relationship with Canvas because they're the ones that we use, and excuse me. But I'm certainly interested in working with other learning management systems. One of the things that we try to focus on at the Salsa project is we build things for a specific context. So, if someone were to come to the program and wanted to start piloting Salsa, we'd be more than happy to take a look at building an integration for the learning management system they were using, as opposed to we're not just going to go and build all those integrations with no one using it right now. And so there's some different ways to go. LTI is common standard. So we're definitely interested in those kinds of relationships for people that are going to be using Salsa. But I think it's a great opportunity to just get started by putting the link in there, again, because it solves a lot of accessibility problems. It also solves a lot of formatting problems, because this is, if you come in here to print this out, HTML is HTML. It's going to look exactly the same as it does in your browser. All right, let's see. Does the syllabus system keep archives of past syllabi created? Yes, it does. And we have a dashboard, an administrative dashboard. I don't really have time to show you that today, but someone could, we could do follow-up if someone wanted to, but that's kind of beta right now. How could one have a copy of this to adopt for their school? How is it stored? Do you keep faculty from editing the main template? I think I covered these first two already. how you keep faculty from editing the main template is the decisions that you make in terms of when you're implementing it, which parts you're going to leave editable or not. So if it's, if it's required to be in there, you just make it read only. And that can actually vary from, a college or department level as well. Are the syllabi public or private? So for our open instance right now, the syllabi are technically public, but somebody would have to have this 30-character random and unique key in order to access this syllabus. And again, that would only give them access to the read-only copy. The edit link is an entirely different 30-digit randomized and unique key. So that's the answer to that. I feel like that's very secure, at least as secure as putting stuff into the course materials archive that pretty much follows a predictable pattern of teacher and course name, like we used to do in the past. Question 3 was based on the web aim or wave checker. Okay. So the wave checker basically is there for evaluating websites, and you can do that in the browser with you can download a Chrome or a Firefox extension, or you can do it by pasting a URL into the wave page. You can just paste that URL right there. Okay. And for number 10, no, an individual can absolutely use it right now. Like I said, there's no cost or sign up or anything like that. And so yeah, if you're interested in using it, I would say go for it. And I'll have my contact information is at the end of the slide deck with further questions that you might have about using it. But absolutely, I mean, what we're trying to do is, really, take away all the barriers to entry in making, the syllabi in higher education accessible, because there's nothing to sign up for. I think it's pretty safe to say, and based upon, a lot of user feedback, that it's easier to use than Microsoft Word. Once you've put it in there, it's very easy to make changes or update. So yeah, let's see. Any questions? Well, that's probably about the time I have, a little bit over. So I appreciate your questions and your attendance today. And as I said, if you have follow-up questions, please contact me by email, and we can certainly chat over the phone, or maybe even have a web conference as well.
Marion or Winona, do you have any questions for him? I can, give you audio access as it's just the two of you. In the meanwhile, I have pushed his survey out to your browser. If you don't have it, let me know and I'll republish. Or I can do one better. I can put it in the chat area. And the reason why I'm still here is because the next presenter is not in the room yet. So if you see me step away, it's to get her up and running, but we can talk to George until. Well, and I want to respect your time too, George.
Oh no, I'd be more than happy to field any questions that you might have. So there's a link to GIMP. Basically it's an image manipulation program. That sounds bad, but it's really kind of an open source Photoshop I would say, or graphics manipulator. Um, it's very cool. Um, that if we have a little bit of time, this is probably in Marianne's and Winona's mind is so is George just some saint? Is he just doing this out of the goodness of his heart? And the answer is yes, but no. There's also I've received funding from the state of Utah. There's there's more than $250,000 of development funds that have been put into Salsa, and where we're going next is we want to have the ability to create a software as a service, just like Desire to Learn, just like Canvas or Blackboard, where you basically go to a website and it's that service is being provided for you, and in that case, Salsa will start to have its own um, user accounts and the ability to do templating at very distinct levels, starting at the institution and working its way down to an individual course or even an individual section. Certainly we've started a little bit with doing some reporting. Want to make that much more robust, but this is one of the things that Butler Community College, they've had a syllabus template for a long time, and before, these people that were in charge of auditing would have to go to the individual instructors and kind of hunt them down and get those to check them over. Well, this report comes dynamically from Canvas, where we pull in this information, and you can see, 1,500 this semester published to Canvas, or excuse me, 1608. So 93% are published, 6% are not. But then these are links to all of the different salsas, and if you have the right permissions, you can open it up in Canvas. If you're an admin, there's also an edit button where you could go in and make changes to the salsa itself. So, a lot more of this type of information is going to be provided in the software as a service version, which I think, as accessibility becomes more enforced, there's a lot of peace of mind of being able to say, here's all of our syllabi. They meet these accessibility standards. If you were to get audited or there's a question there, onto using it actually as a the syllabus as a professional document, sending it to people's promotion and tenure folder, and then all the way up into working with accreditors and saying, what would you like to see in the syllabus, and then having those things baked in. Other institutions as well, we've had some talks with Quality Matters, and we're going to be building a Quality Matters version of Salsa. So some definitely exciting things coming down the pike. And so, but right now, again, my main desire is to see
Well,
people
again,
that
thank you
are
so much, George, for
interested
that.
in moving forward.